Okay, so this next piece took some time for me to do, so I wrote the code out ahead of time and troubleshot it before presenting it so that it would go quicker. And so here it is. This is where we left off. In our game, we killed the hero. So the hero moves around and he can shoot enemies, but if he touches one of these guys, he's killed. The movie clip of the hero is removed from the stage. The onEnterFrame handler that moves all of these bad guys, these enemies, is stopped. And basically the game stops, comes to a standstill. We also lose one life. We start off with 3 lives, and now we only have, let's say, 2 lives, right? But we have to start up the game again, right? And we get 2 more chances. So how do we start up the game again? Now, one way to start up the game again would just be to place the hero back on the stage, get everything moving again, right? And let the game continue, right? Until we have 0 lives and then game's over. But where do you place the hero? We can't place the hero in the middle of the stage or in the middle of this arena, because now there's these enemies right here in the middle, and if we place him right smack dab in the middle, it's actually going to be touching this guy right here, right? So that's not going to work. So what we need to do is we need to run some code that will test to see where all of these enemies are on the stage, and then come up with a random position that is not too close to any of these bad guys, right? So it's going to take some loops and some checking of x and y axis and some for loops and looping through all of the enemies to find a safe place where we can reintroduce our hero and start the game up again. Okay, so let's do it. So I'll show you what I came up with. What I came up with was, and I'm going to basically uncomment this, and I'll show you what I came up with. Well, okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is, I'll explain it line by line. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add this line right here. Right after game lives minus minus, we lose 1 life, we're going to say hero interval, and this is a variable which I've basically just made up on the fly, equals, and then we're going to call a set interval command. That's capital I right there. And then inside of parentheses, and then a semicolon, we can call a function. So we're going to call a function that I haven't even written yet, and it's called hero reset timer. And then comma, and then 3000. What this is a thousandth of a second. So 3 thousandths of a second will equal 3 seconds. So in 3 seconds, we're going to call a function called hero reset timer, and that's going to do most of the work, right? But before we leave this function, I added 2 more lines, right? So I'm going to delete this here now. So that goes there, and we'll bring up the rest. Now the rest of it is right here for this function. The rest of it is if game lives, right, which is how many lives we have left, equals 0. So this tests equality, and if it's equal to 0, we have no more lives left. So then let's trace to the output window right now, just game over. Right, so that's not how we're going to end the game by tracing output, but for the moment, this will be fine. And then once we trace game over to the output window, let's clear the interval of this hero interval which we created here, right? Okay, so basically that's what we're going to do. So if we kill the hero in 3 seconds, we're going to call a function called hero reset timer. That's basically all that does. So now we have to write that function. And so I started writing the function down here. So let me explain the beginning of this function. So right here, the beginning of this function, you see function space hero reset timer, right? That's the name I gave the function. Capital R, capital T, open and close parentheses, curly brace. All right. Then a couple lines down, I say create hero, right? Well, create hero is the function that we used at the beginning to create our hero in the first place. So there's no reason we can't call it again. And what that's going to do is it's going to attach the hero to the stage. It's going to start an onEnterFrame handler to help him move, and it's going to place him immediately in the center of the stage. But we're not going to want to keep him there, and I'll show you why. We're going to set a variable on the next line that I just made up called bad place, all capitals, equals true. So we make a variable on the fly here called bad place and set it to true, and then a semicolon. Then we're going to do a for loop. And the for loop, all right, the for loop, we're going to loop it 50 times. So you can see I put integer I equals 1, semicolon, I is less than and equal to 50, semicolon, I plus plus. So we create a for loop that's going to loop 50 times, right? And then I say if, right, if statement, if bad place equals true, right? And right now, bad place does equal true. So this test, right, double equals is a test equality. It will evaluate to true. So we're going to execute what's in that if statement. Since it's going to be true, it's going to execute. And what we do is, the next two lines are pretty interesting. We say position x equals a random number that's going to be random basically from 0 to 630, right? Because it's a y, because it's 620 plus 10. So it's going to be a random number not from 0 to 630, but from, you got it, 10 to 630. And what does the math.random call do? Well, this is the math class, right? And then the random method for the math class creates a random number between 0 and 1. So it could be 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, up to 1. And then you multiply that times 620 plus 10 will give us a random number between 10 and 620, right? And that looks good. All right, and then we've got another random number that we need for position y. Position y is just a variable made up off the fly, right? Another random number for the y position between 60 and basically 480. Okay, then once we've done that, we'll go down a little bit farther. Bad place equals false, right? So we create an x position, a random x position, and a random y position. We change the bad place variable to false, right? In the hopes that this x position and y position will be good for the hero, right? So bad place is now false because we're hoping that this is going to work out. And then we basically run a test to see if it'll work out. And the test is very simple. The test says, hey, for loop, double I this time instead of I, equals 1, I less than or equal to alien array dot length. So we're going to loop through all of the aliens. We're going to increment each number, right? So alien 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to go through all our aliens, and we're going to test this position x against the aliens' positions. And if position x is too close to the aliens' position x, right, and we're going to test it against all the aliens, we'll set bad place to true, right? So we loop through all of the aliens, and if any one of those aliens, x or y position, is too close to these two variables, this variable here, bad place, will change from false to true, right? So if it changes from false to true, it's bad. And if that happens, what will happen is we'll exit out of here, bad place equals true, all right? We go back to the for loop, then we go back out here, out of the if statement, and then once we get out of the if statement, we do a test. We say, hey, if bad place equals false, so if we went through all of these positions and bad place is still false, then make the hero's x position and the hero's y position equal to position x and y, because, hey, they didn't fail. Turns out that position x, position y was not close to all of the aliens, so we set that hero's x and y position, and that's it. Now, if not, if this is true, if bad place is true, then this won't execute, right? This block will not execute, and we'll come back to this for loop, and we'll start the whole process again. And we can go through this up to 50 times until, hopefully, within 50 times, we should get a position that will work. There is a chance we couldn't, but chances are we will. Once we go through all 50 and it works, basically, the next thing we do is say aliens.onEnterFrame alien hit test function. Call the alien hit test function. So what this will do is it'll start up the aliens moving again, and then once that's all done, we can clear the interval of hero interval, right? The one that we set up in the first place. So let's see if this works. Now, this is a kind of a tricky function, and It's a little bit confusing. It took a lot of figuring out for me to basically get it to work, but it does work. And I'll just remove this here so we get remove one line. So there's the whole function for you to look at, and let's test it out. So we test it out, hit Control Enter, and click here, and let's say we die, right? Boom. So we should get placed back on the stage. And you can see I got placed back on the stage in a safe location. I get killed again, and I get placed in a safe location. And now I get killed and trace what? Game over. Why? Because game lives just got down to 0, and so the game is over. Now, if we want to test this to make sure it really, really works, what we can do is we can go back up to this game lives equals game over, and we can comment out these lines, and that way we can test our game multiple times. So we can click here, and we can test and see if it works. And there he is, and then we can test him again, see if he gets replaced in a safe place. He did. And we can test it again. And if it keeps testing okay, then we know that our settings are decent, right? And that this is essentially working, right? And you can see that it pretty much works, right? So I just tested it 6 times, and I've tested it another 20 times, and each time it seems to work. So that's going to help us replace the hero, right, onto the stage so that we can continue the game. And before I go, what I'll do is now uncomment these lines. All right.